Hello and welcome to our special program on unlocking the network's value with network as code. I'm Guy Daniels, Director of Content at TelecomTV. Now, network as code enables the creation of a new business and technology framework building on the concept of distributed service chains. It represents a new approach to value creation and is seen as essential for 5G monetization. During the next 45 minutes or so, we will explore what network as code means and how it is different from the communications platform as a service model. We're going to discuss the progress that CSPs are making towards different types of capability exposure and identify the steps they will need to take to operationalize the network. And of course, we will try and answer as many of your questions as we can in the time we have today. If you have a question for our expert guests, then please use the form on the website to send it to us because we really do want to hear from you. So let's now meet our guests, and I'm delighted to say that we are joined today by Caroline Chappell, Partner Research at Analysis Mason, and Shkumbin Hamiti, who is Head of the Network Monetization Platform Business Unit, Cloud and Network Services at Nokia. Well, hello to both of you. Thanks so much for taking part today. Before we turn to our viewer questions, let's spend the first part of this program learning more about network as code. Shkumbin, let's set the scene first by digging into the topics of value creation and acceleration. And to achieve this value creation, what should our industry be doing now in order to be successful in the long term?
Yeah, so thank you, Guy. It's a pleasure to be here with you together with Caroline. It's really good question. So let's start with what we know. CSPs have spent over 100 billion in 2022 alone in building 5G networks. And there is probably an equal or higher amount that is going to be spent in 2023 in rolling out 5G capabilities. Those networks come with a tremendous set of features which are very useful for a set of players in the enterprise domain around Industry 4.0, and those capabilities need to be brought in the hands of the developers that build applications for Industry 4.0. So as an industry, we have to get our act together to open up those capabilities and bring those to the developers at large.
Thanks, Shkumbin. And this is becoming such an important area now. Caroline, what are your initial thoughts?
Yes, well, I think what we need to understand is what's happening with the use cases out there. As Shkumbin mentioned, there are so many use cases that people are talking about, enabled by the cloud, enabled by services now. They're going to be more and more complex in the future, and they're going to consist of many moving parts, many different components that are going to be running on different clouds in different even in different parts of the world. Everything is going to become as a service. And when you get a highly distributed as a service environment, the network is so critical to that. But what we've had so far to date is, let's do this over the internet. The internet is marvelous because from a developer point of view, it looks like a single network. They don't have to worry about what goes on underneath. But what they're missing out on is the incredible richness of capability locked into the network that's really only been available to network specialists. And at the same time, we all grumble. We're all now, especially sort of from the time of the pandemic, we're used to working from home and so on. And how often do we grumble because the productivity tools that we're relying on or the applications we're trying to access in the cloud are just not performing in the right way because we're doing it over the internet. We're doing it on a best effort basis. And I think the amazing opportunity now, starting with the 5G network, because of the way it's been architected, because of the things that Shkumbin has just mentioned, means that we can open up those network capabilities to developers so that nothing needs to be the best effort anymore. You can get much more customized connectivity because you can access those network capabilities through APIs, if, of course, this is done in the right way.
Yeah, absolutely, Caroline. And as you say, there's so much value that is locked into the network. So what would you say are the current challenges with ecosystems and network APIs, for the CSPs, but also for enterprises and developers?
Well, starting with CSPs, although the challenges are related for both, I think there's one big word here, which is fragmentation. What are network APIs? What is the network as code? There are so many different aspects to the network. I mean, we've been talking about the 5G network, and it is the focus of today's conversation. But there are many different bodies working on different types of network APIs, whether you're talking about the mobile network, the fixed access network, the transport network, and then of course there are all the TM Forum APIs for operations. And then, of course, we have the CPaaS vendors with their own APIs. We have public cloud providers who've got APIs. There are APIs everywhere. So how do we stop this fragmentation in order to be able to give to developers a coherent, consistent environment so that they can start experimenting with these APIs and start using them for the good of their applications? And so I think fragmentation is one of the issues and challenges that CSPs have to face. Now, of course, we saw at MWC this year the Open Gateway Initiative being announced, which is a very big step forward in terms of defragmenting, if you like, the network API landscape. Camara has already been working to do that in the background, but now, of course, through its relationship with Open Gateway, I think we're going to get a lot more sort of prioritization and consistency into that API development. And we understand that the Camara initiative is also talking to all these other network API initiatives out there. So that's a really, really good step forward. From developers, I mean, fragmentation is their enemy. If we really want them to use these APIs, then we do have to provide them with a much more coherent environment, and one that is much richer than the communication platform as a service environment that you mentioned at the beginning, Guy.
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. And Shkumbin, are you in agreement with Caroline there on the challenges that CSPs and enterprises are facing with regards to network APIs and the whole ecosystem?
Yes, absolutely. I think I could pick up also a little bit on the challenges that enterprises are facing, just to add on. When you think about digitalization journey of the enterprises, they need an easy way of consuming the connectivity, whether it is in a form of a connectivity offered as a private wireless network or a connectivity offered as a slice from a CSP. They still need an easy way to connect their applications and their processes, and without needing to have a deep knowledge of 3GPP technologies, to put it straight out. Therefore, those challenges are something that may slow down adoption of technologies for the digitalization, and that's something that we need to absolutely solve.
Great. Well, thanks very much, both of you, for these introductory outlooks on the topic today. But I do want to look a little closer now at network as code, because there are a number of diverse viewpoints around this. And Shkumbin, if I could ask you, first of all, what's Nokia's perspective here, and how does Nokia define network as code?
Yes, certainly there are diverse perspectives, but picking up a little bit on what Caroline pointed out, which is one of the key issues that we are facing, fragmentation that developers would experience if we don't do something together. And network as a code that we are developing is exactly trying to address developer experience, and it is a service for the developers which is built on a capabilities that are offered by the public and private 5G networks as well as 4G networks for that matter. So it's a service that tries to defragment the experience, and that we see as a key to unleashing the true potential of what has been built and accumulated across the years within the CSPs. In itself, it's a platform that consists of developer services, API gateways, as well as integration capabilities from the public and private networks. And in essence, it is a simplification service for the developers.
And Shkumbin, you both spoke about the risks of fragmentation earlier, but why do you believe it's now the right time for network as code? And how does the industry think beyond the capabilities of the current communications platform as a service, CPaaS model?
The signs are that that this is the right time. Caroline talked about the GSMA Open Gateway Initiative, which is a very serious initiative backed originally by 21 CSPs and later on by few others, which is a very important sign that the CSPs are getting this opportunity seriously this time. At the other side, I mentioned that there is actually a need for capabilities such as network APIs to be ingested into various applications, especially on the industrial domain. And when you think that there is opportunity for a offer and there is a demand, I think the moment is ripe actually for action. Why is this different from the CPaaS play? I think the CPaaS has shown the industry that it is possible to create value based on a developer offering across CSPs globally. The CPaaS, however, is based only on 3 or 4 capabilities: SMS, voice, video, and email. Now with network as code and with the network APIs, we open up a whole new set of capabilities out there. And now to take it through an example of our capabilities that we can unleash, we have an interesting deployment of network as code in a sports arena in the city of Tampere in Finland, which is called Nokia Arena, where we have a fully private network operating together with the operator Elisa in Finland, where we have demonstrated the strength of a programmable network through various use cases. In the same arena where there is an ice hockey game, we have positioned a number of 360 cameras where the select customers can get feeds during the ice hockey game from one camera to another. This is possible only through a programmability of the network over there. The next event after the ice hockey was actually a concert, a live concert that was streamed over VR, and our partner Elisa has been streaming that, where I happened to participate, and it was an incredible experience getting to experience a live concert, being about 200 kilometers away, fully immersed, and getting to select a position where I want to listen to. That's all possible only through a capability of a programmable network, which we have demonstrated in that particular case. There are many other use cases that we could talk that would take us probably hours.
Shkumbin, that alone sounds really exciting. It's obviously very good news for operators as well. Caroline, if I can bring you into this part of the discussion, what is Analysys Mason's view on network as code, and how do you estimate that it will solve the challenges and goals that we've been discussing?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I think, as Shkumbin says, it's actually being able to program the network, having a completely programmable network that developers can then, as I say, pick and choose. I think the Kamara objective is to have thousands of APIs in the end. I mean, obviously, we're at a very early stage of the market where you're going to be able to program every single aspect of the network. And I think, our view is that long term, the way that people talk about network slicing is going to change. We think that the use cases themselves, the applications themselves, are going to use those APIs to set up on demand their own customized connectivity across the network. And I think that will be incredibly exciting. And I think this is really going to be the way forward if you're going to do what Shkumbin has just described, those kind of use cases at scale, so that I mean, we all want to be in the mosh pit at concerts, don't we? And and theoretically, you're going to have millions of people going to be able to do that through the power of programmable networks. I think it's incredibly exciting. But in order to do that, you really got to think through how are you going to open up and expose those capabilities of the networks? What are you going to allow developers to do? I mean, we've got a very long way to go before truly network is as code. But if you think about it, if you think about the direction that networks are going, starting with the 5G standalone core, that is a cloud native software-based network. It's software. It talks APIs natively. It's no different from an IT application that is software and talks APIs natively. And the ability to be able to treat network as code in the same way as you can treat cloud infrastructure as code, and the power of being able to put those together in a single application pipeline. I mean, I think the vision is amazing. As I say, there are many, many steps and challenges we're going to have to go through in order to achieve that vision. But that's where we see as the kind of the North Star end goal of network as code.
This is absolutely fascinating. Well, let me pause our conversation there just for a moment because I want to remind viewers about our Q&A. If you've got any questions at all for Shkumbin or Caroline about the issues we are discussing today, then please do get in touch. Use the form on the website to submit your question. And we've already received several questions in, but there is still time for more. Don't delay, send them in right now. We're going to take a look at some of those questions very shortly, but first let's continue our discussion. Shkumbin, what would you say are the go-to market models that CSPs could adopt for network as code?
Yes, as we're dealing here with a software as a service, as a SaaS model, I think the opportunities for the CSPs are quite many in terms of the business models. But I could place them broadly in two categories. One category is where the CSPs would develop a platform for exposing their capabilities to developers and offer them and work with a number of other CSPs to create a federation across them and defragment the developer experience. Another business model is to partner with companies such as ourselves and offer their capabilities to a platform that would be then offered broadly, globally to the developers. I think the key element in both models is how do we get these capabilities into an enterprise offering in a form of a B2B, and how do we get developers in the enterprise engaged and start using those capabilities for the mission critical applications, which are the highest value applications for the Industry 4.0.
Thank you, Shkumbin. And Caroline, what about you? What models do you think CSPs could adopt here?
I think there are going to be multiple models because I think there's a range of network APIs. I think, as Shkumbin pointed out, if you look at the CPaaS APIs, those are very, very transactional APIs. And there are going to be other transactional type APIs as we expand. And then there are going to be some pretty complex APIs, like APIs for network slicing, that will actually have many, many different APIs underneath them and will aggregate those up. And I think that operators will be able to have a choice. There will be some APIs that they may want to make available in a wholesale kind of model to many different other providers, and there are going to be some APIs that are really very high value, that they're going to want to work with their developer communities, with their enterprise customers to deliver a business outcome, and that's sort of very high value, but sort of low volume use of APIs. But I think the point that Shkumbin made is really well made. I think whatever happens, I think underneath, operators have got to think that about aggregation. They've got to think that even if they are dealing with, say, an enterprise customer in their own country or their own geography, there may be a need to aggregate capabilities in order to serve that enterprise, aggregate capabilities from other operators, either to extend their own reach or to, so the enterprise can get to can have the same quality of service, can have the same consistency, can have the same slice over other operator networks. So I think this point of aggregation, of federation, of being able to go through some kind of common platform, I think is a very powerful idea.
Yeah, there's a lot for operators to digest here. Caroline, how does this tie in though with your latest research? What are the key insights that Analysys Mason found from its recent CSP and developer surveys on network APIs?
Yes, well, Guy, that we had some fascinating results actually. Again, we're talking in very visionary terms here, but it's always good to do a survey of the market in order to bring you down to some level of reality, if you like. So I think the good news, and it's to your point about how our network APIs, is this concept of network as code timely. I think the amount of interest in network as code, both from the CSPs and from the developers, was extremely heartening. So pretty much 3/4 of our survey, of the CSPs in our survey, talked about network as code and network APIs being a top 5 strategic priority. And if you think about all the other strategic priorities that operators face, then that's a pretty good showing. And they also made a very, very strong link with revenue generation. They see network APIs as being very important for revenue generation and service innovation. So those were 2 very, very positive findings. Now, there's a great familiarity with among CSPs with the concept of network APIs, but the majority of the sample were really looking at those APIs for internal purposes, so much more sort of internal focused than how do we enable third-party developers at the moment. There were obviously there's a range. There was the leading edge that certainly are looking at third-party developers and that opportunity. But more, it was how can we produce network APIs that our internal developers can use, that our internal engineers can use, and so that's a big sort of alarm bell, really. Because there needs to be more education of the market, that there is this bigger opportunity out there. If the network is a platform in the way that cloud is a platform, that's going to be far more powerful, and the opportunities for value creation, we think, are going to be very much higher. Now, the other interesting thing, one of the other interesting findings is that yes, the CSPs wanted to start with the 5G core, but are also looking at network APIs, across the network, so not just into other networks like fixed access and transport as well. And I think that there was obviously a concern about security, so that's always going to be a big issue. But I think another interesting finding is that they do see that their peers are their competitors, and this is back to the fragmentation question. Are they going to be competitors with each other, or are they going to be collaborators? As I say, the Open Gateway initiative is really heartening in terms of the fact that it seems to be much more motivation for collaboration, but there's still a lot of suspicion around, is this going to commoditize me? Is this going to commoditize my network? How am I going to make money compared to my peers? And I think a lot of operators also feel badly burned by the whole CPaaS experience. So this came across too. So I think that the network as code experience has to be very different from them. Of course, there are there's the whole sort of developer side of things as well. Developers. We were pleasantly surprised by how familiar developers seem to be with that concept of network APIs, and how much they want network APIs. Again, I mean, a lot of them were seeing that for internal reasons. So to make their in enterprises, to make their employees more efficient, more productive, to give employees better experience. But by far, the most of the developers recognized that network APIs were key to delivering better customer experience and customer engagement in future. I could go on, Guy, but it depends how long you want me to talk about the results of two very interesting surveys. We do have white papers on them as well.
Well, I've got to say, Caroline, some absolutely fascinating findings coming out of those surveys. I'd love to. I think a lot of our viewers would love to delve into that in more detail. This is absolutely some amazing opinions and results you're finding so far. But you've got to analyse this now. What are your recommendations for the industry based on these surveys?
Well, I think, again, as I kind of already have said, that I think that operators have got to think about, how do I get to the largest developer community on my network? What's that going to bring me in terms of the network effects, if I can use a pun there, of having more and more developers actually using those capabilities? Because as Shkumbin said, the capabilities that we're talking about for things like 5G Advanced are actually quite expensive to put in place, and on top of the billions that he mentioned that are already being invested in rolling out 5G networks. So there's got to in order to maximize the monetization opportunity and to minimize the potential for disintermediation, which is still there. We saw it with CPaaS. We don't want it to happen with network as code, but it could still happen if operators aren't playing with each other in the right way. I think they've really got to look very hard at, okay, which are the APIs that we want to open up? How far should we be doing that? And how far are we going to get rewards from that? It's a big learning journey at the moment. A lot of education needs to go on in the market. A lot of research, at the heart of what I do, and needs to go on. But I think there's a massive opportunity there, and I think they can take heart from the fact that developers are very keen to work with them. But they'll just have to have very good strategies for working with those developers as well. Thank you, Caroline. And Shkumbin, some incredible results from those surveys. What are your thoughts on the surveys? And any takeaways from you?
Yeah, first of all, I think they've been really, really encouraging for us to see that there was a lot of a similar hypothesis that we had about the needs and opportunities out there, which both surveys have actually confirmed a number of those. I would like to pick up on a couple of points there. It is very clear that the CSPs around the world are looking at quite innovative ways of getting more money from the consumers while they deploy 5G. However, I'm convinced that the true value capture comes in a form of exposing those capabilities to a whole new set of the parties that will consume those capabilities. And those are the application developers, primarily for the enterprise, but also for the consumers. So that is, after the seeing the results, I think there is no doubt in my mind that that's a very clear path to go for the whole industry. And the second point, which has been raised as a concern, security is absolutely important. When you open up these networks more, you open up yourself to potential threats. That's where we, when developing network as code platform, we take that as, I would sometimes call it like priority zero, the top priority for everything that we do. And therefore, together with the industry, we need to make sure that that we create all the capabilities and the potentially new standards that would be needed to improve the security also in the area on where we open up more capabilities from the core network.
Thanks, Shkumbin. Well, thank you both. And this is a perfect time, I think, to move on to our audience questions. As we have already mentioned, we really want to hear from you. Please send us your questions on Network as Code, but hurry, don't leave it too late. Use the form that's right here on the website.
An open and programmable network is more than just a network. It can connect everything and everyone everywhere. It breaks down silos and turbocharges growth. It's a playground of ever-expanding possibilities and limitless innovation. With a programmable network, you can welcome new partners and customers and open up new revenue streams. Amplify your ideas, magnify your potential, simplify your network, repackage it, repurpose it, shape the future with it. We'll help you open your network securely so you can open your business for greater flexibility. For intelligent automation with enhanced operations, for smarter security, and for a more profitable future. Give your customers the services they need to do the things they want.
Ooh.
Harness the exponential potential of networks. Transform your business to the power of N.
Okay, well, let's take a look at some of the questions we have already received today. And then there's a good one here for us to start with. The question is, there have been previous attempts to generate a vibrant market utilizing network APIs. So why will it be different this time? Shkumbin, let me put that one to you first, if I can, because it's a really interesting question. What will make it different this time?
Yes, indeed, it's a very interesting question, a question that we have been getting also internally for a while, and we have been also asking ourselves, is this the right time? Now, I strongly believe that this is the right time, and I see some very strong indications speaking in favor of this position. The first one is it comes from the capabilities that we see in the 5G networks. The 5G networks are packed with advanced capabilities that were not there in the previous cellular networks. The second point is a big part of the 5G networks is really software, which makes it easier to make it programmable. So this is all related to the capabilities which are at our hands right now. The third one is the financial reality. I mentioned that operators have spent billions in building these networks with vast capabilities, that they need additional streams for revenue to pay back the investments that they have done. So there is that part in. And probably one of the strongest arguments I could have is if you look at what's happening out there in forums like Camara, open source project Camara, and the GSMA Open Gateway Initiative. If you take an example of Camara activity, we are in the steering committee of that activity, and we have seen a tremendous growth of individuals and companies interested in contributing to that open source initiative. And we have been also providing our open 5G network for testing some of the Camara capabilities. So when you look at all this, we think that the moment is actually right to make this happen.
Great, thank you, Shkumbin. The situation is certainly different this time. Next question I've got is one about the public cloud providers. And the question is, what role do hyperscalers play in programmable networks? Caroline, let me put that one across to you. You know, what have you discovered about this as part of your research?
Well, again, this is a very interesting question. So if we look at the hyperscalers, they are, of course, providers of APIs. The cloud is a programmable infrastructure. It's a live programmable infrastructure. And as we move to more cloud native and virtualizing cloud native networks that are running on the cloud, obviously those programmable APIs that the cloud providers already provide will intrinsically become part of the networks, supporting things like the 5G standalone core and Open RAN, for example. But of course, the situation with the hyperscalers is a little more nuanced than that, because are they collaborators or are they competitors? Some of them have announced private 5G network implementations, for example. Others actually provide mobile cores. So, of course, they are working on the fact that those will become programmable as they sell them on to operators. And they have developer communities themselves, very large developer communities that operators will want to tap into. So the hyperscalers themselves see an opportunity to actually provide one of these network platform as a service that we've been talking about. So to be able to sort of support that whole network as a code journey for their own developers, perhaps aggregating operators underneath. So I think, this is a very, very early stage of the market. We're not quite sure how the business models with the hyperscalers are going to work out, but they've certainly got a lot of roles that they can possibly play in this.
Thank you, Caroline. A lot of uncertainties, as you say, which probably explains why we've been deluged with viewer questions. We're getting so many questions in. Every few seconds, we're getting a new question in, which is absolutely fantastic. Right, so let's move on to another viewer question here. And this is about the fact that there's going to be a lot of players involved here. So, Shkumbin, let me put this one across to you. What is the primary value and motivation for CSPs and developers to participate in an ecosystem like this?
Okay, that's really an interesting question, and I think the future will tell exactly what's the value that is created. But my view is that if you look at the CSPs, the opportunity here is to capture a bigger share in the full value chain, which goes beyond plain connectivity. With the programmable networks, you could offer as a CSP additional capabilities to the developers and the users in the enterprise domain, bringing a better granularity of the capabilities to serve such customers. And this necessarily leads to a additional kind of value capture opportunity for the CSPs. While for developers, this kind of ecosystem provides an ideal framework for them to develop once and deploy in as many networks as possible, reducing the complexity and making basically developers focus on what they are developing and not on the network-related details, and leave it to the experts out there. So that, in short, is value, potential value that is generated for CSP and for developers. However, the real value in this ecosystem is that it provides an opportunity for all the players to capture the fair value of this whole value that has been created out there.
Thank you, Shkumbin. Well, there's a very compelling case there for CSPs and developers. And it leads on to our next viewer question, which is about the survey results. And just to remind our audience that the white paper and more information is available if you click through the links below this video. But the specific question we've got in says, looking at the survey results from the CSPs and developers, what is the joint challenge that they need to overcome? So, Caroline, given your work on this, could I put this question to you, please?
Sure. So, Guy, I think it was very clear from the research that CSPs and the developers we surveyed were pretty aligned when it came to which network capabilities they want access to, or want to either provide access to or to consume. There was a lot of alignment there. But I think overall, there is a lack of awareness in the market, which I would say is probably the biggest challenge. So on the operator side, what we saw was when they think about network APIs, they naturally think about an internal audience for them. So they think about their own in-house developers, or more commonly, they think about their own network engineers, because a lot of work has already been going on in operators to make the network more programmable for their engineers. For example, being able to provision the network, to configure the network through APIs. So that's naturally where the CSPs associate network APIs. They don't naturally associate them with third-party developers. And equally, the third-party developers, the external developers, quite often think of the network as a black box. They don't see it as a programmable infrastructure, because it's never been a programmable infrastructure, and they're very locked in. Their mindset is very much at the moment in thinking, how can we work around the network? It's a dumb pipe. We can't do anything about it. We're stuck with its latency, that we're stuck with best effort, so let's just work around. Now, I think what we've said today is that with a programmable network, we're going to see two things. One, we're going to see that those workarounds are long-term not going to continue to work for a number of reasons. But equally, we're going to see that developers pick up on the fact that they've got the programmability, they've got more control over the network, and they're going to start being able to do some more interesting things than they currently are able to do. It's education is going to be the key to this, awareness on both sides from the CSPs and the developers. I think that's really where we see the biggest challenge from the research that needs to be overcome.
Great, thanks very much, Caroline. So more education, and we do need to increase awareness of the potentials here and what the possibilities are. Well, there's a question we've got in about another challenge that CSPs may face. It's a good question, this one. So I think I'll try and put this to both of you. The question is, what skills does a CSP need to have in-house to set up a network as code, and then also to maintain it? Because the skills gap seems the main obstacle to the transformation of the CSPs. So Shkumbin, if I could come to you first with some thoughts on that viewer question.
Yeah, so I could say from our perspective, the way we have built the network as code platform has been with assuming that there is no need for additional upskilling of the existing personnel within the CSPs. We have tried to simplify the ingestion of the southbound APIs, which comes through functions such as network exposure functions, and create that simplification within the platform and expose those capabilities to the developers at large on behalf of a CSP. And therefore, we do not see that there is additional skills required beyond what the CSPs today have. But having said that, just want to remind that what CSPs have today are very complex networks, and the skills which they maintain today are actually already quite important for delivering solutions such as network as code. And then for the developers, if I may use this question as well, the whole idea is that they would not need additional skills beyond what they are good at. If they're developing an application for a certain use case, they should focus on that and just utilize the capabilities in as simple form as possible.
Great, thanks very much, Shkumbin. And Caroline, any thoughts, additional thoughts from you on the possible skills gap that CSPs and developers may face?
Well, I agree with Shkumbin, actually. I mean, we've been researching the softwareization of the network over the past decade or so. And really, I think that operators are more and more familiar with APIs. Certainly that came out very strongly in our survey. I think, you know, as they become more softwareized, as they transform themselves to become more digital, more software oriented, then APIs, it's a natural skill set that they are acquiring. So I think a lot of them have put API management in place, again, as I said, internally, often for internal use, but that there's only a sort of a step on to expose those APIs externally, a big step on maybe in terms of security and the comfort factor of that, but actually technically, I don't think that the skill sets are the real problem here. I think the bigger problem is around the commercial models. What are those going to look like? You know, is that going to be a wholesale model? Is it going to be a professional services engagement? You know, how are they going to bring the network APIs to market? I think that the skill sets around the marketing and selling of those APIs, I think, is the bigger issue here, rather than technical skill sets of being able to deal with a key component of software, which are APIs.
Thank you, Caroline. This is so interesting. We have another great viewer question in here, and that is, how can CSPs find the balance between investing in these new capabilities and transitioning into this new model, this new paradigm, whilst at the same time maintaining their legacy systems and protecting current revenue streams? Shkumbin, this is a bit of a perennial problem, this. It's managing the old and the new. Any thoughts on this question?
I think just to point out that the CSPs has been pacing the declining ARPU, and they have been putting a lot of innovation to actually keep the ARPU from declining and even increasing it. And that will continue. What we are talking about here is an add-on potential revenue streams for the CSPs, not a replacement of cannibalizing the existing revenue streams. So if I understood the question correctly. So this is just an opportunity to actually make more out of your network, in essence, not replace something existing which is actually working for you.
Thanks, Shkumbin. So it's an evolution of what they currently have. We build on that. Great. Well, I think we've got time for a few more questions. So, Caroline, let me put this next one to you. This is a question around security. The question is, APIs will most likely be the main drivers for coding in a live system, but what are the security implications here?
Right. Well, obviously, anytime you talk to an operator about somebody from externally accessing their network, security is going to be the big concern. And certainly, it was a top challenge in our survey. Security was seen as one of the top challenges for exposing network APIs. So security has to be built into the whatever the network platform is that's going to make those APIs available to developers, and the security needs to be reciprocal, really. So operators need to trust the developers, but equally the developers need to trust the operators and the network APIs. Are those network APIs going to work? Are they going to be secure? Are they going to do horrible things to their applications or not? And equally, are the applications going to do horrible things to the network or not? So I think there's a big layer of security that will need to be built into the platform. I mean, modern API management systems already have a lot of that, a lot of authentication, two-factor or multi-factor authentication, encryption, all the measures you'd expect for the trusted and secure consumption of APIs. I mean, yes, that's going to absolutely need to be there. So I don't think there are any implications beyond that, but I just think that, of course, any platform, whether it's today's CPaaS platforms, they also have a lot of security built into them. I think that it's just extension of those best practices and ensuring that you can enforce those on the developer community and the applications they are producing.
Great, thanks very much for that advice, Caroline. And we have a question here about timeframes. Well, Shkumbin, maybe you could maybe start us off on this one, if you've got any insights here. The question is, when do we expect to see such programmable networks deployed by CSPs at scale?
Well, depending on the definition, at scale, but we already see a proof of concept deployments already as we speak, and I think it will really depend on the value that the CSPs will see from such capabilities. I do expect that the adoption will be led by enterprise use cases and opportunities around bringing value to the enterprise domain. And there you talk differently about scale. So it's different timelines in my opinion. When you look at also some other use cases like quality of service on demand, it will be also linked to other kind of use cases such as gaming, and depending on the adoption of such applications in the CSPs network. So timeline, anytime from today to the next couple of years, in my opinion.
Great, thanks, Shkumbin. Thanks for trying to put some figures on this. Everyone's really keen to know what the timelines are, obviously. Well, we've got time for one more question, so I'm going to squeeze this question in that we've just received. And Caroline, let me try and put this one across to you if I could. It's all about fragmentation, because our viewer asks, is fragmentation really a problem here? Because not all applications and services need to be deployed globally. A lot of them could be just deployed locally. So is fragmentation a problem or not?
Well, we're not really talking about deployment, are we? We're talking about development. And I think a lot of applications are developed for global consumption. I mean, Shkumbin was talking about enterprise use of applications. So if you're talking about a robot in a production facility, if you're a big producer of robots, you don't want those robots just to be sold in your own country. If you are a developer of applications that run farming equipment or cameras and sensors, then you want your applications to be developed once and deployable anywhere. And you don't know when those are going to be deployed, which network they're going to run on. You don't know which country necessarily they're going to be deployed in. So you do have to make sure as a developer that you are not having to do very, very specific things for each time you want to sell an application. And I think that's what I mean by fragmentation. If you have a market where, there are 5 operators in your local market, and you have to support 5 different API sets, and worse, and replicate that, across a continent, then that's not going to be particularly sustainable for a developer. So I think that's the danger of fragmentation. Of course, the applications are going to be deployed locally in certain circumstances, but a lot of applications, I think, especially in the enterprise market, are developed by companies that have international markets, and they're not going to want to be constrained by local deployment conditions.
Great. So it's avoiding that development fragmentation is what we're really focused on here, an unnecessary fragmentation. Caroline, that's great. Thanks very much for clearing that up and answering that question. And unfortunately, we have reached the end of the program. We have no more time for further questions, but we did manage to get through a great selection today. So Caroline and Shkumbin, thank you both very much indeed for taking part in our discussion. It has been absolutely fascinating. And thank you, our audience, for watching and sending in all your questions. Sorry we couldn't get through them all. We really do need to have a part 2 of this at some stage. If you'd like further information from Nokia or Analysys Mason on the benefits of network as code, then please just follow the links in the text below this video. For now though, from all the team here, thank you so much for watching and goodbye.